The desert keeps secrets. Some are swallowed by time, others are buried by silence. And somewhere beyond Egypt's southern border, beneath the endless dunes of Sudan, lies a forgotten empire that once rivaled the pharaohs. An empire with more pyramids than Egypt itself. When people think of pyramids, they think of Giza, of colossal stones, golden tombs, and the eternal Sphinx. But few know that deep in the heart of Africa, where the Nile bends like a serpent through crimson sand, stands another valley of kings, older, darker, and lost to memory. These are the Nubian Pyramids, relics of the kingdom of Kush, a civilization that rose, ruled, and vanished, leaving behind monuments so mysterious that even today, science struggles to explain their purpose. For centuries, Egypt has been celebrated as the cradle of civilization. Yet, in the shadow of its glory, another people carved their legacy in silence. The Kushites, warriors, priests, and builders, who dared to challenge Egypt itself, and won. But how could such a mighty empire, one that built hundreds of pyramids, vanish almost completely from human memory? That is the story Unveil Archive is about to reveal. Thousands of years ago, before Greece had philosophers or Rome had emperors, there was Nubia, a land rich in gold, ebony, and ivory. Its lifeblood was the Nile, flowing from the south, carrying not just water, but knowledge, faith, and power. Here, civilization didn't begin in the north. It began where the river's pulse was strongest, in Kush. Archaeologists now know that the Kingdom of Kush was one of Africa's earliest superpowers. Its people were skilled metalworkers, traders, and astronomers. They mastered the desert and the river alike. They spoke a language now lost, built cities of red brick and sandstone, and worshipped gods who would later shape the Egyptian pantheon itself. But perhaps the greatest secret of Kush is not what it borrowed from Egypt, but what Egypt borrowed from Kush. In ancient texts, the Egyptians called Nubia Ta-Seti, the land of the bow. They feared its warriors, they coveted its gold, and eventually they tried to conquer it. For centuries, Nubia was invaded, colonized, and absorbed into Egypt's empires. But in the end, the tide turned. Around 750 BCE, a Nubian king named Meroë rose from the southern sands. He marched north with his armies, not as a raider, but as a liberator, to reclaim the Nile from chaos. And when the dust settled, it was the Nubians who ruled Egypt. For nearly a century, the kings of Kush became the pharaohs of both lands, the rulers of the 25th dynasty known as the Black Pharaohs. They rebuilt temples, revived lost traditions, and brought Egypt's fading glory back to life. But when their reign ended, they returned home, to Napata, to Meroë, to the cradle of their ancestors. And it was there, in the heart of their homeland, that they began to build pyramids unlike any seen before. At first glance, they look familiar, triangular silhouettes rising from the dunes, sharp against the horizon. But look closer, and you'll see the difference. The Nubian pyramids are smaller, steeper, darker. Their angles slice the sky like blades. They were built not to imitate Egypt, but to surpass it, to embody a new vision of eternity. More than 200 of these pyramids still stand today, spread across the sands of El Kuru, Nuri, and Meroë, each one a tomb, a symbol, a whisper from another age. When archaeologists first unearthed them in the 19th century, they were stunned. No one expected to find so many. No one expected to find them here, in the middle of Sudan's desert, hundreds of miles from Giza. Inside, they discovered chambers carved deep underground, walls painted with stars, and carvings of gods long forgotten. Gold jewelry, ritual tools, fragments of linen that once wrapped royal mummies, and symbols that defied translation. But perhaps what fascinated researchers most was what these pyramids revealed about the Kushite soul. Where Egypt's tombs celebrated power, the Nubian ones celebrated transformation. Each pyramid was a stairway, not a monument. Its narrow slope and sharp point mirrored the journey of the spirit, from the earth, through the desert, into the sky. They were portals between worlds. And yet, these monuments were not built in isolation. They stood as part of entire cities of the dead, sacred necropolises, aligned with the sun and stars. In Nuri, the pyramids of the Black Pharaohs stand shoulder to shoulder, rising from a plain of red sand like a broken crown. Among them lies the tomb of Taharka, one of the greatest kings of Kush, a ruler so powerful his name was spoken in both Thebes and Jerusalem. Taharka's pyramid is massive, but not for its size, for its precision. Its entrance faces the rising sun. Its corridors descend into darkness, turning eastward as if to follow the path of rebirth. And at its core, a burial chamber painted with stars, the ceiling a map of the heavens. Some scholars believe the Kushites built their pyramids according to cosmic laws, using the Nile as a mirror of the Milky Way, aligning their tombs with the cycles of Sirius and Orion. Others suggest a deeper secret, that the steep angles of the Nubian pyramids were designed to concentrate energy, to focus the soul's ascent, like an antenna reaching toward eternity. Even today, those who walk among the ruins of Meroë say the air feels charged, as if the desert itself remembers. But as the centuries passed, the kingdom of Kush began to fade. Its power waned, its cities declined, trade routes shifted, empires rose and fell around it, and one day, the sands came. They swallowed temples, devoured cities, and buried pyramids whole. The wind erased roads. The Nile changed its course, and the memory of Kush, of Nubia, of its kings, its queens, its pyramids, slipped from the pages of history. By the time European explorers reached Sudan in the 1800s, the pyramids were nothing more than shadows in the dunes. Many were looted, dynamited by treasure hunters searching for gold. Others were eroded beyond recognition. But what survived was enough to remind the world. Africa's legacy was never limited to Egypt alone. And yet, even now, we've only scratched the surface. Because beneath these sands may still lie answers to questions that could change everything we know about the ancient world. Who taught the Kushites the sacred geometry of the pyramids? Why did they choose this remote desert as their eternal home? And what knowledge did they encode into the layout of Meroë, the city once called the Island of Fire? Perhaps the answers are still buried, waiting for us to listen, because the desert never forgets, it only hides. And what it hides might just rewrite history itself. The desert never speaks loudly, it whispers. And if you stand among the Nubian pyramids long enough, you can hear that whisper, a low hum carried by the wind, moving through the broken stones like a memory trying to wake. Each pyramid stands alone, yet together they form a pattern, a map of belief, geometry, and mystery. To most eyes, they look like tombs. But to the ancient Kushites, they were machines of immortality. Their shapes, their angles, even the shadows they cast at sunrise. Everything had purpose. Each one was built according to divine proportion, echoing a truth the modern world still struggles to understand, that death was not an end, but a transformation. At Meroë, the pyramids rise in clusters, sharp, symmetrical, perfectly aligned with celestial points. The sand burns red beneath them, the sky above so vast it feels like another ocean. When archaeologists first surveyed the site, they noticed something strange. Unlike Giza's massive limestone giants, the Nubian pyramids were built quickly, precisely, and in great numbers. 200 monuments, constructed within a few centuries. Each small, yet perfect. How could a civilization with no modern machinery build so many structures in such a short time? How did they carve stone blocks so exact or align them with astronomical precision? The question grows even deeper when you realize something. The Kushites didn't just build on sand, they built above hidden cities. Beneath the dunes of Meroë lie buried roads, temples, and workshops. Archaeologists have uncovered smelting furnaces where iron once flowed like rivers of molten blood. Meroë wasn't just a necropolis, it was an industrial heart, a city of fire and shadow. Every pyramid above was connected to life below. Each king's tomb was placed near the iron foundries, near the heartbeat of their empire. It was as if they believed energy itself, the force of creation, would carry them into eternity. Modern scientists studying Meroë's ruins discovered traces of magnetite in the stones. That means the material can hold magnetic fields. Coincidence? Maybe. But in ancient beliefs, magnetic stones were linked to the power of the gods, to the energy of the earth itself. Were the Nubians trying to harness something unseen? Some kind of resonance between the earth and the stars? Look closely at their pyramids, and you'll see the answer might lie in their shape. Unlike Egypt's smooth, wide-sided monuments, Nubian pyramids are steep. Their sides rise at angles close to 70 degrees, forming slender tips that pierce the sky. Such geometry isn't just aesthetic. It concentrates force. When light, heat, or electromagnetic waves interact with such angles, they create resonance, a focus point. Could it be that the Kushites, like the Egyptians before them, understood how form could influence energy? Did they build their pyramids not only as tombs, but as instruments to process Orion? Something invisible? Archaeologists may deny such ideas, calling them pseudoscience, but even the most skeptical cannot explain how their design so perfectly mirrors cosmic harmony. Every line, every block, every entrance, it all obeys the rhythm of the heavens. One alignment stands out above all, the constellation Orion. Just as Giza's pyramids mirror Orion's belt, the pyramids of Meroë appear to follow the same celestial pattern. The reason? Both cultures, Egyptian and Kushite, believed Orion was the home of Osiris, the god of rebirth. But here's what most history books ignore. The cult of Osiris, the belief in resurrection through stars, didn't originate in Egypt. It came from the south, from Nubia. Inscriptions found in ancient temples near Napata speak of a lord of the river who rises from the stars. Archaeologists now suspect this could be the earliest version of the Osiris myth. If true, that means Egypt borrowed its greatest god from the very land it once tried to conquer. And the pyramids of Nubia were not imitations. They were the originals. Imagine the scene 2,000 years ago. At dawn, priests in white linen walk between the pyramids, their feet leaving shallow prints in the crimson sand. They face east, chanting hymns to the rising sun. The golden light cuts through the desert haze and strikes the tips of the pyramids one by one, as if awakening them. In that moment, the shadow of each pyramid falls directly upon the next, forming a chain of darkness that connects them all. A perfect rhythm between stone, sun, and spirit. No architect today could design it by accident. This was intention. This was knowledge. And yet, this knowledge didn't come from Egypt's priests or Greece's philosophers. It came from Kush, a land now barely remembered. The deeper researchers dig, the stranger the evidence becomes. Inside one pyramid at Meroë, the walls are decorated with hundreds of tiny stars, arranged in patterns that correspond to constellations only visible from Nubia's latitude. At the chamber's center lies a smooth stone altar with traces of iron and quartz, minerals that respond to vibration. Was this chamber designed for sound? When certain frequencies are played inside, the entire room hums softly, as if alive. Could these pyramids have been tuned? Instruments of resonance that once vibrated with chants, drums, and sacred tones? Ancient texts describe the Song of the Sun, a ritual where priests would sing to awaken the dead and guide them across the sky. If those songs were performed here, beneath these angles and within these stones, perhaps the very air once shimmered with power. The dead didn't sleep here. They traveled. Every discovery leads to another question. How did this knowledge vanish? Why was the story of Nubia erased from the world while Egypt's endured? Some historians suggest politics, that early archaeologists in the colonial era refused to credit Black African civilizations with advanced knowledge. Others believe time itself simply buried the truth. But maybe the Kushites wanted it that way. In the silence of the desert, secrets survive. Noise fades, sand remains. And sometimes, what seems forgotten is only waiting to be remembered by those who still listen. The architecture of the dead wasn't about building monuments for kings. It was about building pathways for souls. Each pyramid was a compass, pointing to where heaven touched the horizon. Each chamber a frequency, tuned to the heartbeat of the universe. In the grand puzzle of human civilization, the pyramids of Sudan are not side notes. They are missing chapters. Chapters that could change everything we think we know about where knowledge began. Because if a forgotten African empire mastered the stars before the Greeks even named them, then maybe, just maybe, we've been looking for the origins of civilization in the wrong direction. And there was another discovery. One so strange, it barely made the news. Within one of the sealed chambers, researchers found blackened walls coated in a thin layer of fused silica, the kind of glass formed by extreme heat. No torches could have done this. No ritual fire could have reached that temperature. Whatever happened down there was not ordinary. Some scientists speculated it was caused by lightning strikes or natural geothermal events, but others, quietly, suggested something different. That the Kushites may have been experimenting with heat, light, and minerals in ways we don't yet understand. That perhaps these chambers were not only tombs, but laboratories of transformation. It might sound like fantasy, until you learn that Meroë was famous for metallurgy. Ancient records describe the city as a place where iron was as common as clay, and that's no metaphor. Excavations have revealed furnaces large enough to melt hundreds of tons of ore at once. Meroë was the iron capital of Africa. Now, imagine this. A civilization that mastered the fusion of fire and stone, that understood how to manipulate heat, magnetism, and resonance, and that built hundreds of pyramids following celestial laws. Would you still call that primitive? Among the strangest artifacts found near the pyramids was a small bronze disc, etched with circles and symbols. At first, researchers thought it was a decorative object. Then, under ultraviolet light, faint patterns appeared, spirals that matched the rotation of the star Sirius. The disc predates the Greek astronomical models by centuries. So, who taught them this? How did they know that Sirius was a binary star, something modern science only confirmed in the 19th century? Coincidence or legacy? Some believe the Kushites inherited their knowledge from an even older source. A lost civilization that once thrived before Egypt, before Sumer, before history began. Clues of this possibility appear in their own myths. The oldest Nubian legends speak of visitors from the River of Light, beings who came from the stars to teach humankind the secrets of fire and eternity. They were called the Children of the Sun, and they promised that those who remembered their teachings would rise to the sky when their bodies turned to dust. It sounds poetic until you realize that the entire layout of Meroë follows the geometry of the sun's movement. Every temple, every pyramid, every street was aligned with solar pathways. At the equinox, sunlight enters certain tombs at exact moments, illuminating carvings of the same star beings described in those myths. How did they achieve that precision without modern instruments? How did they track celestial movement across centuries without telescopes? The answer may lie in what they left behind. In 2017, satellite imagery from NASA captured thermal anomalies under the sands near Nuri, heat signatures consistent with buried stone structures. When researchers overlaid the map with the constellation Orion, the match was perfect. Not approximate. Perfect. Each pyramid corresponded to a star, each chamber aligned with a celestial line. If this was deliberate, then the Nubians were not only building for death, they were building a cosmic machine, a mirror of the universe itself, a device of stone and silence. But here's where the mystery deepens. At the heart of Nuri lies the pyramid of King Taharqa. When researchers lowered cameras into its flooded chamber, they found something unexpected. The entire interior was submerged in crystal-clear water. That water has been trapped there for centuries, untouched, unmoving, pure. Some believe it's groundwater. Others believe it's deliberate, that the Kushites designed the tomb to flood as part of a ritual to merge the king's soul with the Nile and the stars. Because in their mythology, water was the bridge between worlds, the source from which both gods and men were born. To die in the earth, surrounded by water and aligned with the heavens, it was to become eternal. When you see it that way, the pyramid isn't just a tomb, it's a vessel, a ship made of stone, sailing forever through the cosmic river. And yet, for all this wonder, much of it remains unprotected. Few tourists visit, fewer scholars study it. While Giza's stones are guarded by fences and fame, Meroë's treasures lie exposed, eroding under time and wind. The world still talks about Egypt's glory, but forgets that Africa's heart holds another cradle of civilization. The irony is almost poetic. The continent that gave birth to the first kings is still waiting for its story to be told. The sands of Nubia are not empty. They are alive. Every gust of wind shifts the surface, revealing fragments, shards of pottery, glints of obsidian, beads once worn by queens. Each fragment a whisper, each whisper a reminder. That history is not what we were told. It is what remains buried, waiting for us to listen. If the Nubian Pyramids truly mirror the stars, if their chambers resonate with ancient frequencies, and if their builders knew secrets now lost to science, then humanity's timeline must be rewritten, because perhaps civilization didn't begin in Egypt, or Mesopotamia, or Greece. Perhaps it began here, in the silent sands of Sudan. Perhaps Africa's forgotten legacy is not a shadow of Egypt's greatness, but its very source. As the sun sets over Meroë, the desert glows like gold. The pyramids cast long, jagged shadows that stretch endlessly toward the horizon. And in that silence, between light and darkness, you can almost hear the pulse of something eternal. Maybe the pyramids are still doing what they were built to do. Maybe they're still humming, still connecting earth and sky, still sending their message into the void. The question is, are we finally ready to hear it? The desert at night is not silent. It breathes. Beneath the stars, the wind carries echoes, whispers of kings and queens whose names have been buried for 2,000 years. And if you listen closely, you can almost hear them calling us to remember. The Nubian Pyramids are not ruins. They are reminders. They stand as proof that greatness once lived here in the heart of Africa, long before the world decided where civilization began. For centuries, the world has drawn its maps of history from a northern gaze: Egypt, Greece, Rome. But here, under the Sudanese sun, lies another center of the ancient world, a place that shaped gods, empires, and time itself. Today, the pyramids of Meroë rise quietly from the dunes. Few footsteps disturb them. No crowds, no fences, no flashing cameras, only the wind and the sound of sand shifting like time itself. But to stand before them is to feel something no textbook can teach. It's to realize that our story, the story of humankind, is far older, far deeper, and far more connected than we've ever been told. When you look at these pyramids, you don't just see stone. You see memory. You see the persistence of an idea, that death can be conquered, that legacy can defy time, that meaning can survive oblivion. And perhaps that's why they were built. Not only to honor the dead, but to speak to the living. The 21st century has rediscovered the Kushite legacy, but not yet understood it. Archaeologists still excavate new tombs every year. In 2023, a buried temple complex was found beneath the dunes near Meroë, containing inscriptions in the still undeciphered Meroitic script. No one knows what it says. It could be a record of kings, it could be a hymn, or it could be instructions. If the script is ever translated, it might tell us not just who they were, but what they knew. Because deep within these sands lies something humanity has forgotten, not just technology, but philosophy. A way of seeing the universe not as chaos, but as harmony. The Egyptians called it Ma'at, balance, order, truth. But the Nubians lived it. They built entire cities as symbols of cosmic balance, where temples aligned with stars and pyramids echoed the rhythm of the Nile's flood. To them, architecture was prayer, mathematics was faith, stone was song. Yet, the world almost erased them. Colonial explorers dynamited their tombs. Historians reduced them to footnotes. For decades, their artifacts were scattered across European museums, labeled under Miscellaneous Egypt. But history cannot silence the desert forever. The wind has begun to reveal what was buried. New satellites are mapping forgotten cities. New generations of African archaeologists are returning to rewrite their own story. Not as imitators of Egypt, but as the inheritors of a lost empire. Because the kingdom of Kush was never a shadow. It was a sun, one that set too soon, waiting to rise again. And maybe that's what these pyramids were built for all along, to outlast oblivion, to speak when all else was gone, to remind us that the roots of knowledge are deeper than our memory, and that Africa, the cradle of humanity, was also the cradle of genius. Every civilization that rises, falls, but ideas, real ideas, never die. They sleep, and when the world is ready, they awaken. Tonight, as the moon drifts above the desert, the shadows of the pyramids stretch across the sands of Nubia. They point north, toward Egypt, toward the Mediterranean, toward the world that once forgot them. It's almost as if they're still sending a message carved not in stone, but in silence. That greatness needs no witness, that truth survives without applause, that legacy, like light, cannot be buried forever. For every empire that ever rose, for every monument we call eternal, one truth remains. All of it began here, in Africa, in Kush, in the land where pyramids once kissed the stars. So when you next hear of the great pyramids of Giza, remember this: there is another valley, deeper and quieter, where kings sleep beneath the sand, and time itself kneels in reverence. There, in the twilight of forgotten glory, the Nubian Pyramids still whisper, "We were here, we built, we dreamed, we remembered, and now it is your turn." Because the past doesn't belong to history, it belongs to those who seek it. If this story moved you, if you felt the weight of those forgotten stones or the echo of the kings beneath them, then share their voice. Let the world know that Africa's greatness was never lost, only waiting. Subscribe to Unveil Archive and help us keep unveiling what time tried to bury. Because somewhere beyond the horizon, the wind still whispers through the dunes of Nubia, and the pyramids are still listening.